we would like to introduce a new rep from Half Moon Bay.
I'd like to introduce Paul Nagengast, a new city council member,
Hi. Well,
who
Welcome.
actually was our public works director about 20 years ago.
yes,
And he's been a deputy city manager in Woodside, I think it was.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he has a lot of government experience and civil engineer. Welcome.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
And I just to add that Nancy has years of corporate experience
Yes,
and
great
is very
experience.
efficient and has been on our board of GCSD for a number of years.
For 4
So,
years. Welcome, Nancy. Thank
all
you.
of that, and let me move on to the special order of the day, the election of Sam Board Officer. Oh, no, first roll call, sorry. Edition.
Yes, Director Marsh,
Here.
Director Radek,
Here.
Director Negangast,
Here.
Director Slater Carter. Chair Dye.
Here.
Good.
Right. Now, moving on to special order of the day, election of SAM board officers. I would like to nominate Director Reddick for president.
My second.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Right, can we have a roll call, please?
Director Marsh,
Yes.
Director Negangast,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Director Boyd,
Yes.
Director Radek,
Yes.
Director Dye.
Formerly Chair Dye. Yes.
You did a great job, Barbara, as always. Thank
And I
you.
will hand this over and maybe you want to do. We have another election.
Are these are 1-year terms?
Yes.
Yes.
Rotates. Thank you for your support. I am here for you.
We should have asked for the vote. Were you willing to stand for this? But
I did.
your
I
yes,
asked
your
her.
yes vote was
Oh,
pretty
it's fun.
indicative.
Okay, so we're moving on to public comment. And these are for items not on our agenda this evening. I see we have one hand raised, Greg Diegas.
We have other officers that need to be elected or just the president?
Oh, yeah, we do. Sorry
We
about
do.
that. Yeah. So, is it Montera's turn next?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm entertaining motions for vice chair.
I would move that. Which one would Montero like?
getting pointed at.
I would nominate Director Slater Carter to be vice chair.
Second,
Thank you.
could I have a roll call, please?
Director Marsh,
Yes.
Director Dye,
Yes.
Director Negangast,
Yes.
Director Boyd,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Radek.
Yes,
Thank you.
We elect the other two. Do we?
we don't elect secretary
Or do
treasurer.
we?
We do.
I think we do, yeah.
And
Just
sometimes do
secretary,
them separately
treasurer.
and sometimes jointly. So
Well, treasurer is.
Anybody tell me what they do? Because I couldn't find that in the I actually read the JPA yesterday
All right.
for my sins.
Should be in
And
the
so-
bylaw.
There's no bias.
There are no bylaws.
That's right.
Well,
For
it's just,
now. We're,
the
we're going to, well, we'll talk about that later. There will be bylaws, but not now.
I just don't know what meaning it has.
yeah, well, you'll be responsible for money going in and out. No,
Yeah,
not
but
entirely.
not all the
No,
details that are in the JPA,
Right.
which means holding bank accounts.
Yes.
They have
We'll
transferred
sign
a
some
lot of
things.
those responsibilities to staff that were originally a board member's responsibility because they were not appropriate for board members. Because when they said I had to be treasurer, I said, I don't think I'm going to do the
I
things
remember
that are
that, yeah.
listed. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
there's a consultation role on preparing budget and
Hmm.
working with staff, kind of being the financial
Like
liaison.
a point person.
It's probably, you might consider a role like on the finance committee or something like that,
Yeah, and then the secretaries, there's some things that require a secretary signature.
Like sometimes if we're, applying for grants, we need a signature or,
Well, and there's,
Since staff does the minutes, so secretary doesn't have to do them.
when you sign them.
Yeah.
Sign them.
so the next officer is secretary. So
secretary
I'd like to,
treasurer.
It's both? Okay,
We can do both, unless, there's one position that the chair cannot also hold. So it's depending on the rotations.
it's the
In
treasurer.
years past, we've sometimes had.
Well, you
Yeah.
could just do secretary and not even do treasurer. If that's
Well,
We want the-
treasure, I've
So-
taken a kind of the treasurer because we need people to sign checks.
oh, we also.
And
Yes, I'm sorry,
Jeremy?
Jeremy.
Yeah, so just I'm looking at the JPA agreement here. The only position that is limited as far as 2 officer positions is the chair. So Chair Ruddock, you just have to be chair. That's it. Other than that, people can hold 2 offices. So, and one of the things that, it is the case that a lot of JPAs will select a treasurer from one of the member agencies from staff, but our JPA agreement actually says a treasurer and a secretary shall be selected from the board by its directors. So that means a board member must be each. Now, that doesn't mean they can't have other people help them, but so you need to have one of each, and but it is permissible to have 2 positions as long as you're not the chair.
Yeah, but you could have just a single secretary treasurer too.
You could.
Like I
Yes,
was just
yeah.
recently. No, last year, secretary treasurer.
Yep,
Yeah.
you can do that.
Okay,
The only person who can't have 2 roles is the
Is the
chair.
chair.
Well, I would nominate Director Marsh to be secretary treasurer. That's the next in rotation.
second.
Ah, okay. I'm willing.
Good.
It's I think a good learning thing.
Yeah.
As long as it's not the description that was in the JPA and it's related to finance committee, that's fine.
So we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Dye,
Oh, yes.
Who was the second?
I was.
Thank you.
Director Marsh,
Yes,
Director Negengust,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter,
yes,
Director Boyd,
Yes.
Chair Ruddock.
Yes. Okay. We've completed item 1B. We're moving on to public comment. And I see Greg Diegues has his hand raised. Greg?
Thank you, Chair. I have 3 notes. First is my term on the Midcoast Community Council has expired. I do not know who from the MCC will attend these meetings in the future, but I will be attending anyway, as I have for the past decade or so. And I want to express my appreciations to all of you for your service. I know that it's work. Secondly, I want to invite Sam and the member agencies to take a look at the MCC's draft stormwater report. Sam is featured prominently in that report. There's a lot more I could say about it, but what my hope is that we can elicit comment from the various member agencies and Sam before we produce a draft that will go to peer review. The MCC is going to fund a peer review process, and that we get all the errors and omissions and any other good suggestions into the report before we go there. There will, of course, be other drafts, but I'm asking for agencies to take a look at it now if they can. I find it's fascinating reading. It's only 270 pages, but you could probably get by with 12 of them if you read the executive summary and the science and the recommendations. My third comment relates somewhat to stormwater. I would ask that the board consider the addition of another 200,000 gallons of wet weather storage in the Burnham Strip. You may remember that we added only 200,000 in 2021, and 2 months after we did it in the storm of October, I think it was 24th, we came within 6 inches of overflowing the wet weather storage, even with the extra capacity. So as we've learned with wildfire, stormwater is the same thing. All the methods of estimating are inadequate. They're not forward-looking enough. And in stormwater, we find ourselves, even with the most recent NOAA data, 10 years out of date. And of course, that's what happened with wildfires. People were using the historical data to estimate risks because the state wouldn't let them look forward. And the insurance companies lost 108.6% of their revenues over a decade. We face the same kind of backward-looking risk in stormwater. So that's why I'm asking for the board to consider the addition of that wet weather storage, because I'm aware that there are some delays on the construction at Caltrans, and I hope we have time to squeeze in that addition before whatever is going to happen in that complex area of Surfers Beach gets resolved. So thank you again. And obviously, I'm still going to be involved in drafting that report. So you can send your comments to me or the MCC either way. And I'll be glad to talk to you about them if you have things that you find concerning. Thanks again.
Thanks for the invite and heads up on that, Greg.
I'd
Appreciate it.
like to add a comment to
Sure.
what Greg has said, and that is in the decades that I've lived here, I've seen more and more houses draining their stormwater into the gutters,
The street.
the street. And it's having, and as people build up here, uphill, there is more and more stormwater going down and putting the houses at risk. Scott and I both got notes from Miss Emily, those who remember Miss Emily. She's still living in her house at the lowest point in Montera. The county will do nothing to help her. Yet if you drive up and down the streets, you see all of these white pipes going out into the ditches. And this is the county's response. Stormwater is the county's responsibility. None of the sanitary districts wants to handle it because the county has left it in such a disastrous state that it is harmful to homes and lives now. And so I would recommend, please, everyone read it and get in contact with your neighbors. Because not only does it come down to Miss Emily's house, but it goes through inflow into the sewers. And guess where it goes last? Here. And we were very, very, very lucky that we didn't lose the entire plant several years ago. And a community without sewers, people are gonna have to leave. If it was gonna take a while to fix it. We've made a lot of fixes at this plant. We got some FEMA money for it, but none of that changes the runoff patterns.
Well, I think we need almost, some models for homeowners, how to deal with it, because like in Half Moon Bay, so much of the city is just flat.
Mhm.
Like in my own property, I think there's 0.04 inches between the backyard and the street. Right? So with these big atmospheric rivers, I got a lake in my backyard, and I don't know what I have to do to actually deal with it. One thing is to get it out to the street. The other thing is somebody recommended, well, maybe you need a cistern, but spend $30,000 or $40,000 on putting a cistern in. So what are some of the model solutions for communities like mine, where so much of it is just plain old flat? And
Your-
you
your
have a
whole yard
different
can't be a
problem.
French
You've
drain.
got water running down.
You don't
But-
want it running into your streets because then it will get in your sewers through INI.
Yeah. It'll go
Well, in
through
some
the
cases, it goes
manhole
into other
covers.
people's yards.
Exactly.
I mean, we have a different
It's-
problem in El Granada because the county didn't put in enough storm drains.
Mhm.
So in a lot of cases, the water, particularly like from Quarry Park, just runs down the street until it reaches a storm drain.
Mhm.
And on the way, it goes into various people's houses and so forth. So, but that, again, it's a county responsibility. I don't know if there's
In
something
some
we can do
areas,
to
yeah.
say, dealing with it is a county responsibility.
Well, maybe if they won't, maybe we should just go to the EPA.
Well,
We're not gonna-
the county recognizes
Yes.
the enormous cost of dealing with stormwater. So we have ongoing discussions at CCAG, every year setting priorities like, how are we gonna get a handle on stormwater? The cost is immense.
Mhm.
And like one shoreline is actually dealing with some of it. We don't have any formal agreement, like who's gonna deal with what? Is it one shoreline? Is it the county? Is it some MOA between the two? Do we need stormwater fees, in every city to help pay, So everybody recognizes it's immense, but we don't seem to have any forward, motion in terms of how are we gonna solve it? How are we gonna how much is it gonna cost? How are we gonna share that cost burden? But you know, it's flooding, so it's not just sea level rise, it's gonna be groundwater raising. And then it's gonna be intense storms
Mhm.
causing, you know, more and more standing water. And it's gonna get worse because of rising groundwater. So we have this huge, you know, I would say Armageddon quality issue. And, you know, we just don't seem to have any forward motion on a regional approach.
It's helpful when Tim posts before big storms. A reminder on I and particularly to make sure that your gutters aren't blowing into your sewer lateral. But it's probably something that come out once a month, so you know, when it's a sunny day, people can go check that and look for alternatives. But I find that at least that's helpful for alerting people to. This is one of those things that puts strain on your sewer system that will cost you money if you don't do something.
So how can people tell without hiring like an engineer, whether they're connected to the,
That's easy. You hire a company who will come and smoke test.
well, Half Bay has been doing smoke testing.
It's not that easy, unfortunately, because you would hope it was that easy and it would just come out the pipes and the storm drains. But people are smart, right? Humans are smart and they figured out if they put a P-trap in and the smoke is not going to come up through the P-trap. So.
Well, I mean, I know I have a
We-
French
we know that
drain, so
happens.
you could at least. You know, try to see if you know you have something, and if you don't know you have a place where it drains,
Mhm.
then you may need to do more work.
But even with a French drain, does it ultimately get pushed out to the street?
It ultimately goes into the groundwater, it just goes more
Right.
slowly.
It works like a groundwater recharge.
And what if you're on top of like solid clay?
Yeah, you're on clay, so you'd have to have a sump, or you could do a French drain or some sort of thing with a sump pit and pump it out to the
Yeah,
street.
you're right.
in your
It all,
neighborhood.
it all
Yeah.
depends on the soil types.
All depends on the soil types and the perk factor.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in a rock, between a rock and a hard place in my neighborhood. so-
Yeah, and it's
or a
interesting
clay
that,
place.
that you've got a, like, Emily has a very different situation from yours.
Mhm.
They all stem from the same root cause. But the solution's gonna take very different shapes depending on the topography.
Yeah,
And, you know, it's just, where do you live? Oh, your challenge is this. Oh, your challenge is
Mhm.
that.
Kishan?
Yes, my question is for Greg. We understand it's a draft document and it's got very large file space. Is it okay to upload it on our website so that people can access it easily?
It's fine by me, and yes, it is, geez, I don't know, 40 megabytes and growing.
Yeah.
But again, that contains a lot of appendices and engineering reports that aren't directly relevant. There's probably 90 pages of content. And the vast majority of that is neighborhood by neighborhood findings for neighborhoods in El Granada, Montero, Moss Beach, and Half Moon Bay. But yeah, sure, why not? It's a public document on the MCC website.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
Can I ask a quick question? Hearing all the discussion with storm runoff, storm drainage, and I can tell you there isn't a magic bullet. It's costly. And is our concern on the board, the relationship with this and I mean, that ultimately, it's a double whammy. It's not only just the direct cost to drainage, but also the increased cost to the inflow and infiltration.
Right.
Whether it's from the street
Good
or
point.
in our backyards.
yeah,
So there is a relationship.
Hmm.
How that gets worked out, boy, you know, it's
Well,
tough.
I
Yeah.
think the peer study that was done in the late nineties, a peer reviewed study that said that we should put in large holding
Hmm.
areas so that it doesn't all rush to the sand plant at once. The system that was designed and put in El Granada doesn't take energy.
It's fantastic, the way it works.
It works.
No
it
moving parts.
saves beaches.
Yeah.
And it saves the plant. And I agree with Greg, the original peer review study called for 600,000 gallons of storage. I think it would be smart for Sam to protect itself from fines and other things, to work with Granada to get the other 200,000 in. And Sam should also work with Half Moon Bay to put in maybe mini whole catchment basins or something like that to control the flow into Sam, because as we get less and less, more and more lot coverage on each lot, we have more and more runoff. And that's just one of the facts that we need to deal with. So I think that maybe a good project to work on for the next year would be to put in another 200,000 in Granada. Tim can talk about all the advantages to it in terms of saving money on when maintenance is performed on other parts of the system. On the fines we haven't had to pay from flooding and all that stuff. And Half Moon Bay would benefit and it could
In the event
join
another
in.
mega storm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But okay, just, I can't speak for El Granada exactly, because we haven't had a discussion, but I think we'd be amenable to it, but it has to happen fairly quickly. Even though it's been slow, our park plan is making steady progress. So this is something that would have to be expedited and would have to be a priority of this board to vote the funding for and get moving on. So,
To that point, I think we've moved into a place where it's like,
Yeah.
maybe we
We're
can
beyond public
agendize
comment.
this.
Yeah, I'm
and-
just
let's
thinking
put
the
it on the
same
next
thing, yeah.
agenda.
Yeah, so we, I would agendize a discussion, as a future item, freewheeling discussion. And maybe do a little homework, find out about alternatives.
I think one thing, that's
Something's
a
got
great
to-
idea, and one thing that we should be looking at, maybe not for the next meeting, but in the future, is the cost to the community and of putting in a different kind of stormwater system, because the real problem now is we can't just run stormwater into the ocean like used to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to think creatively, I think, and looking ahead.
So that's it.
I don't think we're gonna have a problem this year. It looks like there's no rain in the forecast. Yeah, we,
Wait, that's good.
no, it's not good. I like
There's
myself.
no atmospheric river in the forecast.
No
but we would
atmospheric
like a
river.
sprinkle.
But I
At least
mean,
you guys have had some rain. We've had 0.1 inches for the year down here in Southern California.
I know, it's gotta be scary where
Oh,
you,
no wonder Newsom wants to get that tunnel going.
okay, I think we should move on, but I think we have an idea for a future agenda item to talk about this. It affects everybody.
This year.
So do we have any other hands raised for public comment? I don't see any.
Yeah, because it's.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the consent agenda. Item number 3, which is approved minutes of November 25th, 2024. Approved minutes of December 9th, 2024. Approved disbursements for January 13th, 2025, and a monthly revenue and expense report for period ending November 30th, 2024.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Could I have a roll call, please?
But can I amend that, just,
Sure.
and we brought this, I wasn't at the minutes, and
Okay.
I've been told you can still vote for them, but I'm uncomfortable voting on minutes I haven't really read or was I a part of. That would be item 3A and 3B.
But why don't you abstain on the roll call then?
That works?
Yeah.
Okay.
We need 5 affirmative votes to pass. So,
Oh, okay,
I think we'll be good.
okay.
Could I have a roll call, please?
Director Marsh,
Yes.
Director Dye,
Yes,
Director Negangast.
Abstain?
I believe it'll be abstain only for 3A and 3B, right?
For the minutes.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the motion is for the whole
Yeah,
agenda.
yeah, right. The motion was the whole.
Consent agenda.
Correct.
It would be fine.
yes,
Director Slater Carter, Director Boyd,
Yes.
Chair Ruddock.
Yes.
Thank you.
600.
and if I can just make a quick note
Sure.
on the revenue expense report, it's still $600,000 over budget. However, two big pieces of this are the retirement contributions, which have to be made early in the year, and the infrastructure costs, which aren't necessarily spread out through the year. So
Yeah, even I was surprised the depreciation was off. Is that because it's not evenly spread?
I don't pay
It's under the,
depreciation.
it's under the infrastructure.
Okay, so we have approved the consent agenda. We're moving on to regular business. And we have one item, which is establish board operations committee and finance committee, the standing committees, and set the times for these meetings and the place. And appoint directors. So why don't we start out with the board operations committee? Would somebody on that committee like to just explain what you guys do? In your committee?
What do you?
Well,
But you guys are finance committee ladies. We don't have any more board officers here.
Oh, we don't have any more board operations people here. Okay.
Yeah.
So Jeremy,
yeah, I wonder if we've had these standing committees for a while. And the way that the staff report is set up, it makes it seem like maybe that we didn't, but we have. And so what you are required to do each year, I mean, you're not really creating a new standing committee because it's already a standing committee. What you're really doing is just creating your meeting schedule. Unless you want to dissolve the standing committee, which the board can do also. But if you want it to continue, there's a need for it. And there's both, to have a standing committee, you have to have a regular subject matter and a regular meeting time, essentially. Those are the two requirements. So if you want to continue to have it, what you really just need to do is just pick days to have it. Now, if you want to have a debate about whether you still need it or not, that's a fair thing to do as well.
yeah, so the operations committee traditionally, as I'm familiar with it, has worked on human resources issues primarily, I think. I can't recall another sort of item that the operations committee.
I've never
worked on.
served
I think
on it, so.
Yeah, I think it's mostly like HR stuff, like the general manager's performance review. Maybe review the labor's memorandum of understanding, that kind of a thing. Now, certainly that doesn't come up, those issues don't come up more than like once a year, typically. In the case of the MOU, it's a multi-year document, and sometimes tweaks have to be made, side letters, because of issues come up. But I would just say, does everybody think we need that sort of thing, given it's sort of limited?
This is just my observation, looking at the list that's in the memo about what those committees focus on. I had a question about whether do they really need to have a monthly schedule, which you have to prepare for or cancel? Or particularly maybe the operations committee, could it be scheduled 4 times a year and you only do it when you really need it and cancel it rather than scheduling it for every month? I added up.
Makes sense.
I added up the board time.
Yeah.
And if the board meetings and committee meetings are 1 to 2 hours, it's 18 to 36 man hours of board time every month.
Yeah.
To help with management, which just sounded like
Yeah.
a lot of hands-on. Maybe you guys would like less hands-on. But actually for both committees, I thought, do these both really need looking at their subject matter to be every month? Or could they be quarterly and have a special meeting when you need a special meeting?
I'd go one step further and suggest that at least for dealing with the MOU and the managed performance evaluation, those could be ad hoc.
Like a
Yeah, I was
1 year.
gonna
once a
ask
year
Jeremy
ad hoc.
about that,
Not,
actually.
not once a
Yeah.
year. If it's scheduled, then
Yeah.
it's a standing committee.
You're right.
That's
If
right.
it's unscheduled and done as needed, then that's ad hoc.
So what do you think about that, Jeremy, making operations more of an ad hoc committee, called only?
That'd
when-
be, from what I've heard, that sounds perfectly appropriate because it sounds like you don't always need it. And the subject matter is kind of changes from time to time. It's not like you have a particular portfolio to go through as you do with finance, which is focused on the budget and things like that. So you certainly could do that. But I would just say this, if you get to the point where you're having monthly meetings and it's starting to look more and more like a standing committee, then just reconstitute it as a standing committee.
Yeah. Kishan, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, just to make it clear, the board operations committee in the past has not only taken up evaluation of general manager or self-evaluations, but also discussed policies. If we have to bring up and adopt certain policies, we discuss it first in the board ops committee. And besides that, we also discuss the plant operations in detail as to what's going on in the plant, new equipment's getting added, or something not working properly or working properly. These are the things which briefed to the directors once a month. And it's not that it happens every time, every month. I typically send out agendas or ask for agendas. If there's nothing, then we cancel the meeting. So it's just a placeholder. We have it so that everybody knows that it'll be the second Wednesday of every month. And otherwise, it's pretty difficult to get 3 directors to agree on a particular date and time. So I start a week before that, and then check with people if any agenda is anything to be added in the agenda, and then have the committee meeting. So I think it's a good idea to have it as a placeholder for second Wednesday of every month, and we can decide whether to have it or cancel it. That's just my thought.
Nancy?
If the main thing that's happening each month is briefing, which is in the board packet as well, do you really need, if it's not, I can see the need for it if there is something where you have several different ways you could go or options, and you just want to use it as a sounding board and have a little brainstorming, that seems reasonable to me. But if it's a briefing on operations, I think the reports that I've been reading every month, even if I wasn't on Zen board, are very informative. And what is that doing that the board doesn't get otherwise?
If I could add something,
Yeah.
it's a Brown Act issue. We can't discuss things without a committee as an agency.
Oh,
So if it's
understood.
only in the agenda, we have no way of raising issues prior to the meeting. One of the things I have discovered at other boards I'm on is having committees saves board meeting time. Otherwise, if something comes up, then you've got to put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and things can get drug out. Committees are a way of adding efficiency to the organization and keeping the board informed, which is a critical part.
But it only keeps half the board informed.
It keeps half the board informed, you are correct. And we can raise issues and see whether it needs to come, in our opinion, to the board as a whole. Many times we're going, not a big deal. But it is useful, again, for the efficiency of the board at our meetings, because we've only got a 2-hour meeting here.
I'd like to hear from Paul too. Paul, do you have any observations about this?
Well, it wasn't clear to me whether, is this information given to us every month, or is this something that'd be totally separate, just given to this 3-person board, and then the 3-person board or subcommittee decides whether the full board gets to see it?
Kind of, and that's,
What about?
You guys want me to weigh in on that? I mean, so if I can, Madam Chair. So committees exist for the convenience of the board. You don't have to have committees. And the difference between a standing committee and a ad hoc committee, realistically, other than like their subject matter, is ad hoc committees don't have to have Brown Act compliance. You don't have to notice the meetings. You don't have to have the public allowed to attend, although you can allow them to attend. But there's not the requirements that are same that you have with standing committees. As far as, do you need it or not? Really, that's one thing I've seen. I mean, exactly the point that was just brought up is if you get rid of committees, sometimes you'll have longer board meetings because the idea is that they make it more convenient. Maybe they can drill down in areas that the full board might not want to. But it really comes down to what you folks think is the right amount of time and attention. If you think you're going to be regularly using the committee structure to talk about these issues, keep it standing. If you think there's just not that much for operations committee to do, then you might want to go to ad hoc.
What about the suggestion of making it quarterly? That kind of reduces the number of meetings and keeps it as a potential place for discussion of issues that maybe don't need the full board, but
well, except things come up, as we know at SAM.
yeah.
Issues pop on the fly sometimes.
Well,
So you do a
then
special meeting. You can do a special meeting if that happens. So
Right.
you could just do.
So a special meeting of the standing committee.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
so I think we're talking ourselves into, the subcommittee is important. It may not need 12 times a year, maybe 4 times, and as necessary, should the subcommittee think something should be immediate
Mhm.
attention, not wait for the next one,
You can call a special meeting.
yeah.
Okay, well,
I
that
kinda-
makes sense to me, I guess, yeah. Quarterly meetings with special meetings on occasion.
Do you need a motion on that?
So I think what we're looking for, if we're gonna do that. I mean, one thing is the cadence, the other thing is the two committees. Reading through the detail. It sounds like we're kind of leaning toward, okay, so there's standing committees, let's keep both. Who's gonna be on them? That's, I think, the next question, right?
Yeah, or we can have, direct staff to come back with a recommendation at the next meeting for quarterly meetings of the operations committee. And
I think we could dispatch it right now in terms of,
if we can patch it right now, great.
yeah. I think it's, the question is who's offering to be on the committees.
Well, actually, building on that, maybe the way to go is set up the committees, have them meet and come back with, if they want to change the time from monthly, they make that proposal, and it's a very simple board item to
Yeah,
change.
that
the
makes
time.
sense to me, to postpone a decision on time, let the committee meet, they can figure out their own schedules
And
and
come back with a
cooperation with GM. But-
I'm willing to stay on both committees. We have to plan if we're going to have it on Wednesday. I've got to check because I like to attend the LAFCO meetings now that I'm an alternate.
Well, I think we were just talking about leaving the time up to the committee itself when they meet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well, for GCSD, I think Director Marsh is gonna serve on operations. And I will stay on finance.
okay. I'm
She has
happy to,
extensive experience in that area, so I
okay,
think she'll be very valuable.
so Catherine, do you want to be on operations?
yeah, I am
Okay.
already.
All right, so, I'm happy to be on operations and you might want to be on the other one.
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we have Slater, Carter, Marsh and Ruddick for operations committee. Okay,
And,
and
and
then,
does the schedule for finance work for the other two members? We've been meeting on the third
This Thursday.
Thursday at 11.
well, why don't the finance committee meet this week and then decide if that time works for everybody?
Sounds good to me. I can do that.
Okay, so
So
as,
basically, the motion is to re-up the standing committees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
With
they
no-
come back with their proposed schedules.
but we're trying to figure out who's gonna be on it. Sorry, too. Yeah, so we already decided the operations committee, finance committee. Who would that be? Paul, I think, wants to be on the finance committee. Barbara,
I'll stay on the
finance committee. So we need another member from,
Catherine said she would do
I will
both.
stay on the. finance
okay.
committee.
So,
Just one question on
Yeah.
that. If I'm treasurer, I will just need to touch base. Well, I'll just touch base via Kitchen and George, I suppose, with the finance committee.
okay, so we have Megan Cast, Di, and Slater Carter for finance committee. And now finance committee meets this Thursday at 11.
Right,
So it's up to you to figure out your meeting time.
It says,
Just notice it as a special meeting, since we haven't set regular meetings for the year, just do a notice as a special meeting. And then after that, because the next meeting presumably will set the regular times by resolution.
And so was the Thursday meeting this week 10 or 11?
It is 10.
At 10?
Yeah.
Normally it's 11 though.
I prefer 10.
Okay.
So
I
it's
can
10
change it to
this
10.
Thursday? Okay. Kishan, you have your hand raised?
Yes, it is 10 this Thursday, but I guess Director Marsh has already answered my question. So as a treasurer, Director Marsh is welcome to attend the finance committee meeting so that she gets a good hang of the finances. Because this is quite a unusual phenomena where you have the treasurer who's not on the finance committee. But I respect corporate I to be on the finance committee, no problem with that. But we would also send an invite to Director Marsh so that she could also attend the finance committee.
Should,
It's not a quorum issue. 'cause
yeah,
it's
so there's
an-
an issue with that.
Yeah, then
She can attend, it
As a
just, she
public.
could, Yeah, no, well, what she could be is like an alternate. So that, do it like that. That way you only, because you can only have three members of the, because otherwise it's a board meeting, right? So just make it, so you have three members on the committee and then you have one alternate. She can be the alternate. And she can attend like anybody else, right? She just won't be able to vote unless somebody else is missing.
I can just observe,
It's not a quorum, it's a-
so not a member.
Yep.
But just observing.
Yeah.
Oh. fine.
Keisha, we can talk about that offline. We can make it work.
Okay,
Okay,
I think you two should come Russell over it.
so do we need a motion on these committees?
You can. I mean, sometimes the chair just appoints, but it's probably, everybody's here, probably not a bad idea.
I'd suggest, if we're all in agreement, chair points, keep it simple and we're done.
Okay. Yeah, so for Operations Committee, I appoint Catherine Slater Carter, Nancy Marsh, and myself, Chair Ruddick. And then for the Finance Committee, Paul Nagangas from Half Moon Bay, Catherine Slater Carter from Montera, and Barbara Dye from Granada.
and for board operations, is it going to be every quarter?
Yeah, I think that's what we decided every quarter, but then if there's a need on an
Okay.
as needed basis, then we can schedule a special meeting.
Yeah, and the committees can come back and tell us if they
Right.
need to change the schedule.
Committee flexibility based on what you like and what you don't.
Vacation, just to that point, quarterly, but you sort of need an organizing meeting, so maybe that is. Are we past the second Wednesday yet?
Think so.
Yeah, so maybe that is in February is the first quarterly meeting. February, May, that makes sense.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so we're moving on to item 5, which is the general manager's report.
Yes, we have the detailed staff report there, and staff is here for any clarifications, questions. But besides these, I wanted to bring up 2 other points and inform the board and the public. The first item I wanted to mention that our finance team has started working on the budget. So we have Peter Medina, who's our finance consultant, and of course our finance team. We have George Evans and Callie. We have started the budget process. The processes will be similar to what we do every year. We formulate a draft budget, discuss it with the member agency managers, and then we bring it to the finance committee. And after the finance committee approves it, we bring it to the board. And once the board gives its consent to take it to the member agencies, then we send it out to the member agencies for discussion at their board or council. And finally, it comes back to SAM board for adoption. So just wanted to let you all know that we've started the budget process. The second item I wanted to brief everyone is there was a request from Director Marsh about bylaws, which was called for in the JPA. So we've actually got Jeremy to start off working on the bylaws, and Jeremy can talk a little bit about the bylaws requirement. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Sure. Thanks, Kishan. Yeah, so in the JPA agreement, there's a reference to bylaws in the context of the duties of the president. But there are no bylaws that I'm aware of. If they exist, they've never daylighted themselves. And the provision dealing with bylaws was placed in the JPA agreement back in the 1970s. So maybe back in the 70s, there were bylaws, but in any event, it seems like I have other JPA clients who do have bylaws, so there's templates we can use. You don't have to have bylaws, but they can be useful and can help kind of fill in the gaps. Like, for example, what we just did tonight with the elections and the rotating, who holds the chair. Those are the kind of things that can be memorialized in the bylaws. So it's a useful thing to have. It just kind of creates a record of how SAM does business. So we can put something together for board ops and ultimately the board to consider, and then you'll have bylaws.
Sounds like a board ops issue. Yeah. Sounds like a meeting.
Sounds like fun.
That could actually be content for an operations meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sounds good.
So one reference to the word bylaws in the JPA. Just
Yeah, no,
and you carry out the other duties.
It's
that
the
are in the
place I
bylaws.
was looking yesterday to learn what the president does, what the vice president does,
Yeah.
what the treasurer does.
Well, I know the CSDA has sample bylaws.
Right.
that We are there for us to pick and choose from, so.
I asked someone from the past, I asked Leonard Warren, if he knew anything, but he said there's never been bylaws, so.
I was gonna say Leonard. We need
Leonard
to
is the
check with
one.
Leonard.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I felt the same
Document
thing.
that says bylaws and it's just this space intentionally left blank.
Right, yeah.
well, you went back further than I did, Director Dye. I checked with Carl Nelson and he had never heard of the bylaws, so. But I think you've dove deeper.
Well, thanks for bringing that to our attention, Nancy. Thanks for that. Okay. Do we have an attorney's report?
We do. I have a case to tell you about. I just learned about it today and I threw together a quick PowerPoint presentation, only 4 slides, 3 of which are substantive. Here we go. Oh, I need sharing. I need to be able to share.
Callie,
All right. Let's see if this works. Can folks see my PowerPoint?
Yeah, we all know about this.
Oh, yeah. I know more than I want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not a surprise to us, Jeremy.
But it is a bit of a surprise. It was a surprise to me, and it's a surprise to some of the trade associations too. So I had a hunch that certainly, given the location of the Casamara condominiums, that Half Moon Bay would probably have. I figured Debbie would be familiar with this, but in any event, I'll just quickly touch on this. You're probably familiar with this. This was from the Coastside Buzz. You know, they wanted to repair these condos because they were falling into the sea. Also threatened a sewer line, which I assume was the city of Half Moon Bay's.
Granada?
Granada.
Oh, it's
and
Granada.
It's Granada and it has been moved. It is no longer in that position. It is no longer threatened.
That's right.
Okay, well that's certainly good. Anyway, it's a bigger issue though, because the case, and this was a Court of Appeals decision. So you had Coastal Commission staff and it's really a question about the policy of the Coastal Commission of managed retreat and whether, you know, as the sea encroaches on, you know, hardened structures, should you essentially allow the ocean to reclaim things that weren't otherwise exempted because they were considered existing structures, meaning, well, it depends, you know, and the definition of existing structure is what's really at stake in what is now a decision going to the California Supreme Court. And that's why I'm bringing it up, because this issue in this case is currently, you know, there's a request being made by both Association of California Water Agencies, AQUA, and CASA, California Association of Sewer Agencies. So, and a number of other agencies. And the reason is because in the Coastal Commission's policy, there's a real question as to whether existing structures, if you have critical infrastructure that was built after 1976, shouldn't you be able to protect it? And so there's some real concern that, given the decision of the Court of Appeals, it puts at risk the ability of agencies such as SAM and such as Granada and such as, you know, all of the member agencies here to be able to protect critical infrastructure that may not have been constructed after 1976. And so anyway, stay tuned. The current ruling from the Court of Appeals would very much limit the circumstances under which, you know, and as you just told me, that sewer line was moved, but maybe some sewer lines can't be moved, right? Maybe there's some facilities that you really are not able to feasibly move. And so it's a big issue for a lot of agencies. The concern is, okay, well, maybe sometimes we'll be able to do it, but maybe sometimes we can't. And then how do we continue to provide essential public services? And so my hunch is the California Supreme Court will likely accept review of this case, although I've been surprised before. And with that, I would just say stay tuned. It's a big issue. That's it.
It was my understanding that they said that some armoring could be used to protect the coastal trail.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
which
Yes,
implies that, you know, even though the sewer question is moved, we spent $450,000 relocating that sewer. So it goes in a completely different direction now. But, you know, that's really not relevant to the issue, which is, do these lines deserve protection? An interesting case, thank you.
right. Yeah, stay tuned on that one.
Just
That's all
want
I
to
have.
point out, you know, the issue comes down to the criticality of the infrastructure.
Yeah,
You know, the coastal trail is a key piece of the public access mission of the Coast Mission. They are not prohibited from making case by case findings,
Right.
right? They can make findings specific to a particular case. They can also seek legislation to exempt certain kinds of projects. So I don't think Sam would be prohibited ultimately from doing what it might need to do to protect itself from encroaching seawater. But yes, it would be the basic the fundamental policy to prohibit armoring, but they always have that flexibility to make a case by case decision. So.
Great.
And I say that as a former Coastal Commission alternate who sat quite a few times. So.
well, and it seems to me that
Yeah.
the claim that existing means anything that's already existing at the present time, which means anyone could build anything and then say, well, now it exists and therefore I should be able to protect it. That seemed like a very tenuous claim when they
Well-
said that it exists right now, so we should be able to protect it. That didn't make sense to me.
Well, and look at the fix that Newsom just announced for the fire
Yeah.
properties. You know, he's suspending the Coastal Act
And
For
all
Malibu.
environmental acts.
and CEQA
Mhm.
for everything, right?
But not for
Um,
like new construction, just for reconstruction, right?
Except
Except,
current Coastal Commission guidance says if you have a plan to renovate 50% or more of your property, you must move the structure back,
Yes.
right? Now, there is a replacement on a case-by-case basis, which makes me wonder why he suspended it, you know. But I think that the reason is because these homes in Malibu are built on the beach,
That's right.
right? This is a different kettle of fish than like, say, having a house, even in Miramar, set back, you know, from the ocean. These homes are sitting right on the beach.
there is no option to move them back, really.
There really is no
Maybe
option to
on the
move their
highway.
back. They're right up against Highway 1. Right,
They're major contributors.
yes. And it was interesting that the only thing that survived the fire around Carbon Beach was the physical new coastal access that the Coastal Conservancy funded next to Keffins.
Yes.
Yeah, Coastal
Well,
Conservancy.
Conservancy,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's gonna be an interesting battle. That's
Mhm.
gonna be really interesting, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, he did the order. But, you know, is it gonna stand and who's gonna push against it and what kind of fine tuning or tweaks are gonna happen to it? It sounded, a lot of it sounded very, very thoughtful about, look, you know, there's a lot of people need to rebuild and we don't need any friction to get them get back into their homes. He's made some allowances, like allowing them to increase the size by 10%. And other things where it's like, interesting choices, but that's where I think people are gonna play on the margins.
In the case of Malibu, there is no additional 10%, right? I mean, without going into the
They're
water,
squeezed in,
Or,
yeah.
into the.
Yeah,
low-
some of these
lower-
lots are built over
Yeah.
the bluff.
Yeah.
And onto the beach.
They're on the beach.
Yeah.
I was looking at the photos of the burned out houses and I've been down there walking that beach. They're right on the sand.
That's my hometown,
Malibu?
LA.
Mhm.
And so those are beaches I used to go to. But one of the charming things about Malibu is on the other side of the highway were two fairly large mobile home parks.
Yes.
So there actually was middle-class housing in Malibu.
Mhm.
And for those, the 10% might be meaningful.
Yes, for them. Yes. East of the highway.
Yeah,
Right.
that's gonna be a hard place to rebuild.
Yeah. That's Senator Allen's district, and a few years back in 2019, he had a bill that would have set up a program to for the Coastal Conservancy to give loans to cities and counties to buy up vulnerable properties now, and then lease them back for the duration of their useful life. Then the cities and counties would have the burden of tearing down the stuff and cleaning it up. The bill died, for obviously, good reasons. But as a result of that, Geffen sold his properties. So he's out of the picture now, but these people are kind of stuck unless they bring back that bill, which would be a terrible thing, is you'd have to, develop appraisals for properties that, in 40 years will have absolutely no useful life whatsoever. So you gotta buy them out now, knowing that in a few years their property will be worthless.
Yeah, but it's burned
It's,
out properties. They're a lot less expensive than they were before they burned.
Yeah.
Yeah, thorny problem. I just bring this up because of the problems are so terribly.
I mean, the fires aren't even out yet.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's gonna be a long haul to get this all.
Yeah.
Rebuilt and.
And Newsom will be gone before that problem is even solved, probably, and a lot of the legislatures will be turned out, so.
Again, it highlights that this very personal thing for every individual home has different consequences. Like here, if you can move it back a little bit, or if you're up on a bluff, or there if you're on the beach, or across the street in a trailer. It's that's the fun of governance, is trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we juggle all these different, very special, very personal cases?
Well, one of the things that might happen is, so right now in Southern California, the commission has started requiring non-habitable first floors. So it might be that they allow them to build up.
They've been doing that for a while in Miramar.
Yes. But that's becoming coastal commission policy. So just like in South Carolina, I think they're
Yeah,
allowing-
where they're
You
all
have
still.
they're all on stilts.
walls.
That's the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
of the
We have
California
some
coast.
friends in Pennsylvania who live right next to the river. They lifted their house.
Yeah.
But now they use it downstairs for storage. Like it's crept in over the.
But it's not habitable.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
it's complicated.
Well, just to make it more fun, in Asheville, where they had the torrential rains. I've been there, Lake Lure and other places, and there was a lot of stuff that was sensibly set back up onto the hillsides, scoured away,
Yeah.
was gone, and it's it looked like everything was sensibly done.
Yeah.
And then they just had a storm that was bigger than any design storm, and they weren't ready for it.
Right,
So
and if you
it's-
try and put in restrictions based on, well, we might get one this bad, it immediately goes to court.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I like the coastal commission, if you wanna build there, fine, but you take the risk.
Yeah, that's a question the state's been having now since about 2010. It's like, how do you work that out?
Yeah.
Well, Oregon never has, as you know, never has said that, you can riprap, and if you build too close to the ocean, they won't, it's your own risk.
Well, that was our feeling at Coastal Conservancy, was just make them bear the risk.
That's right.
Full freight.
It's hard to get people to actually cross that line, isn't it?
It is, it's really tough. Well, the other thing about the non-habitable first stories is they will not allow garages either. You can only have a carport that's open on
Open.
both ends.
Otherwise, you know what's
Yeah.
gonna happen.
No place for
It's an
storage.
ADU, yeah.
And nowhere to put the extra bed.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway,
we've been on this long. Any director's reports? Thank you for that, Jeremy. Appreciate it. Were you done? I don't even know if you were done.
I was, no, I thought the follow-on conversation was very helpful, so, yep, all done.
Okay, director's reports. Okay. Topics for future board consideration. I think we all agreed that bringing back the issue of stormwater control. Do we have any closed session items tonight?
I don't, unless Kitchen has something he wishes to discuss.
No, I don't have anything for today.
Okay, so this meeting is adjourned.
Yay,
Thanks.
it's hot. Great.
Happy New Year.